My fiancée slept with her boss and told me it was for our future, so I leaked everything to HR, canceled the wedding, and vanished. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and for a long time, I thought I had it all, especially with my fiancée. Clara, we were that couple friends, called us goals. Coworkers joked we'd end up running a company together someday. I first met her at a startup networking event 3 years ago. She was talking numbers, strategy, and passion like her life depended on it. I remember thinking, damn, this woman's on fire. And somehow, that fire didn't scare me, it pulled me in. Clara was magnetic. She had this laser focus that could slice through a room full of suits and zero in on the one person who mattered. And when she looked at me, really looked at me, it felt like I mattered. We fell into step-fast coffee dates, turned into shared calendars, shared passwords, shared goals. We talked about traveling to Japan, opening a consulting firm together, maybe even getting our MBAs side by side. It all felt possible with her when she landed the job at Blue Peak Tech. I thought it was the next step in our level-up arc. Big firm, big pay, fast track to management. Clara was elated, and I was genuinely proud. I took her out to dinner, toasted her with cheap champagne, and told her, this is just the beginning. She smiled that sly, knowing smile and said, you and me, babe, next stop, Forbes list. I believed her. I believed us. I didn't notice the shift right away. The way she started keeping her phone screen face down, brushing off conversations about the wedding, or going quiet when I asked about her new manager. I thought I was imagining things I wasn't, and that promotion she was so excited about. It didn't just change her title, it changed everything. And I had no idea just how much it was about to cost me. At first it was nothing I could point to, just a vibe. Clara started coming home later than usual, but she always had an explanation. Client dinners, team drinks, networking events. She used to call me on her lunch breaks just to say hi. That slowly stopped. I'd text her something silly and get a thumbs-up emoji hours later. I told myself not to be clingy. She was building her career, after all. I wanted to be supportive, but the space between us kept widening even when we were sitting on the same couch. She'd laugh at her phone, but hide the screen if I looked over. She used to tell me everything office drama, funny Slack messages, even which coworker she found annoying. Now, radio silence. When I asked how her day went, it was always the same line. Nothing interesting. One night I noticed she had changed her lock screen to some vague stock photo abstract colors and light streaks. It used to be a goofy picture of us from a road trip. I said, hey, what happened to our pic? She barely looked up. Felt like something more professional. Professional. That word started showing up a lot. Everything she did was for her image. It felt like I was becoming bad optics. The sex dried up too, which she blamed on stress. It's just work, babe. You know how demanding Greg is? Greg, her manager. I didn't know much about him, just that he was older, charismatic, and apparently thought Clara was leadership material. She said he was mentoring her, pushing her toward the next big promotion. I smiled and nodded, trying to be the supportive fiancé, but something about the way she said his name made my stomach turn. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it, but deep down, something was already cracking, and it was only a matter of time before it shattered completely. It happened on a random Wednesday night. Clara was in the shower, and her work laptop was open on the kitchen island. She rarely left it unattended. Hell, she usually shut it completely, even if she stepped away for 5 minutes. But that night, it was wide open, and a message popped up from Greg. I wasn't snooping. I really wasn't. But when a message lights up saying, last night was worth every risk. You looked stunning in that red lace. You don't just walk away. My heart stopped. I read it again, hoping I'd misread it. Maybe it was a joke, or meant for someone else. But then I scrolled up. There were weeks of messages. Plans to meet at hotels during conferences. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Comments that made my skin crawl. Photos. Flirty comments. Mentions of how useful it was to have Greg on her side. She even referred to me once. He thinks I'm pulling late nights for reports. So gullible. That one crushed me. I closed the laptop quietly, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall. I didn't cry, not yet. I just went numb. Clara walked out a few minutes later, wrapped in a towel, humming something to herself. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened and asked, "Want to order Thai tonight?" I mumbled, "Sure." I didn't look at her that night. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message, that red lace. All those nights I made her tea while she said she was finishing reports. I was supporting her while she was building a future with someone else. And the worst part, she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore, because she never expected me to find out. And if I hadn't seen that message, I never would have dot. The next morning, I couldn't pretend. I was pacing the living room before she even woke up, my chest tight, heart hammering. When Clara walked in, still groggy and wrapped in her silk robe, I asked, "How long have you been sleeping with Greg?" She froze. Just stood there, blinking at me like she hadn't heard right. Then, unbelievably, she sighed. Not guilty annoyed. "Seriously," she muttered. "You went through my laptop." I stared at her. That's what she was upset about. I repeated the question, slower this time. Her jaw clenched. Finally, she said, "It's not what you think." When I didn't respond, she crossed her arms and said something I'll never forget. "It's not about sex. It's about leverage." I felt like I'd been slapped. Clara went on, explaining how Greg sees potential in her, that he's grooming her for leadership. And according to her, playing the game is just part of the process in corporate. "It's not emotional," she said. "It's a transaction, and it benefits us in the long run." Us, she was standing in front of me, justifying sleeping with her boss. For our future. "I don't care if you're mad," she added. "You have no idea how women have to navigate these spaces." I asked her, "So you're just okay with this? Selling yourself to climb a ladder?" She looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you want to be with someone successful, you have to understand how success works." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not just the heartbreak, but the sheer disrespect. She didn't even see it as cheating. She saw it as strategy. And somehow, I was supposed to sit back and be proud of her. I didn't cry. I just walked into the bedroom, grabbed a bag, and left. I crashed at my brother's place that night. Didn't say much, just told him Clara and I had a fight, and I needed a few days. I couldn't even form the words to explain it yet. Everything I thought I knew about her, about our relationship, about what we were building, was gone. Not broken. Gone. Like someone had wiped the slate clean while I was still writing on it. I laid awake on his lumpy couch, replaying everything. All the late-night dinners I made while she claimed to be finishing reports, the wedding Pinterest boards, the joint savings account, the plans for Italy. She let me dream while she plotted her next move. And she didn't even flinch when I found out. Because to her, I wasn't a partner, I was just part of the image. In the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from her. "You're being immature. Can we talk like adults?" I didn't reply. Later that day, she sent another. "I never lied about loving you. Don't throw this away over one mistake." One mistake. That wasn't a mistake. That was a campaign. Months of deception. Calculated betrayal. And now she wanted me to be the bigger person. I started journaling everything. Dates, messages, locations. Not because I had a plan, but because I needed to see it all laid out. Needed to confront just how deep this went. The pattern wasn't just cheating. It was control. Manipulation wrapped in ambition. And I was done pretending it was love. That night, I stared at our engagement photo on my phone. She was leaning into me, smiling like we had the world in our hands. And I wondered how long she'd been lying to both of us. How long I'd been nothing more than a useful illusion. I knew I couldn't go back. But I also knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 2 days after I left, I stopped mourning and started digging. Not out of obsession, out of clarity. If Clara could gaslight me that easily, what else had she buried under strategy and ambition? I remembered her bragging once about how cutthroat Blue Peaks culture was, how only the smartest played the long game. Turns out, Clara had been playing for much longer than I thought. I made a burner email and started combing LinkedIn. Found a couple former employees who'd worked under Greg. One of them, a woman named Kelly, had written a vague post months ago about the unspoken cost of mentorship. I messaged her. Pretending to be a journalist, researching corporate ethics, she was hesitant at first. Then she said, "You're not the first to ask about Greg, and you won't be the last." She didn't give details, but the tone said enough. Asterisk, another guy, James, said Greg had a type. Ambitious, smart, willing to bend lines. He didn't name names, but when I mentioned Clara casually, there was a long pause. Then I'd be careful, man. Some promotions come with strings no one talks about. I started building a timeline. The late nights, the hotel conferences, the sudden bursts in Clara's career right after mentorship retreats. She thought she was invisible, untouchable. But the dots connected too cleanly to ignore. Meanwhile, Clara kept texting, "I know you're hurt, but please don't let this ruin us. We worked so hard to build something real. You're being cold and it's scaring me." Scaring her. That was the first time I realized she was losing control. I wasn't just some heartbroken fiancé anymore. I was a liability. And if she thought she could spin this, she hadn't seen what I could do with the truth. I didn't just want closure anymore. I wanted consequences, and I was finally ready to deliver them. I thought the betrayal started with Greg, that everything before him had been real, that our relationship was solid until ambition poisoned it. But that illusion shattered the day I got a call from an old friend, Samira. She used to work with Clara at her previous firm. We weren't close, but we'd hung out a few times at parties. She messaged me out of nowhere. "Hey, I heard what happened. Just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Also, I think there's stuff you don't know." I asked what she meant, and she paused. Then, this isn't Clara's first time. She did something similar with her last boss at Next Deck. It didn't go public, but HR got involved quietly. She left before things escalated. My heart sank. I asked why no one ever told me. Samira said, "We all thought she'd changed. That maybe you were the real deal. But some people don't change. They just get better at hiding." I stared at my screen, feeling sick. All those nights I thought we were falling in love, building something unshakable. She was rehearsing, refining her act, and I was just the newest audience. Suddenly, it wasn't about Greg anymore. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern, and I was just the latest rung on a very well-planned ladder. That night, I deleted every photo of us from my phone. Not out of anger, out of clarity, because I finally saw her for who she was, not a broken person who made a bad decision, but a calculated one who never planned to stop. And now that I knew the full truth, I was done being quiet. It was time to pull the first thread and watch her entire web unravel. You'd think after everything, she'd at least slow down, call off the wedding. But no, Clara doubled down. She called me 3 days after my silence broke and said, "We need to get back on track. The wedding's only a month away," like nothing happened. Like we hadn't burned everything down in that apartment. I asked her, "You still think we're doing this?" She replied, "Of course. We've invested too much. You need to be realistic now." Realistic. That word again, her way of saying, play along for optics. When I didn't respond, she sighed and said, "Look, I know I made mistakes, but let's not throw everything away. Do this with me, and I promise you, everything will pay off soon." It wasn't an apology. It was a pitch. Like I was a startup she needed funding for. And I realized right then this wedding wasn't about love. It was a business merger. And I was the smiling groom in the press photos. Nothing more. So I played along. Smiled through texts. Let her parents think everything was fine. Even showed up to the venue tasting like a good fiancé. But behind the scenes, I was putting pieces in place. I contacted a lawyer. Moved my savings. Canceled our joint credit lines quietly. Meanwhile, I kept feeding HR everything. Screenshots, voice memos, chat logs, even afforded confirmation of her last hotel booking with Greg's name on it. They replied with a simple, "Thank you. An internal review is underway." She had no idea, because I wore the same smile she used to wear with me. Polished, .com, strategic. But in my head, the clock was ticking, and she had no clue that when it hit 0, she wouldn't just lose the wedding. She'd lose everything. Just when I thought Clara couldn't sink lower, she dug a fresh hole. One evening, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was trembling. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Clara came by today. She said you've been having episodes." I nearly dropped the phone. Episodes. Apparently, Clara had shown up unannounced to my parents' house. All smiles and concern, talking about how worried she was for me. Said I'd been unstable, paranoid, even suggested I was having a mental health crisis. She said, "You're pushing her away because you're overwhelmed," Mom whispered, like she didn't know what to believe. Dad got on the line and asked if I was avoiding the wedding out of cold feet, and that's when the anger hit me like a freight train. She didn't just cheat. She didn't just manipulate. Now she was assassinating my character, twisting my silence into a weapon to protect her image. And the worst part, it was working. My own parents were questioning me. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just said, "Don't believe everything Clara tells you. I'll explain everything soon." Then I hung up and stared at the ceiling, heart racing, vision blurry. That was my lowest moment. Not when I found the messages, not when I learned I wasn't the first, but when the woman I once loved, who I thought would defend me, turned me into the villain in her narrative. Just to save her own skin, I sat in the dark that night and felt hollow, not angry, not even betrayed anymore. Just exhausted. She was dragging my name through the mud, and I was still playing nice. That was the moment I stopped reacting and started preparing for the final blow. It happened sooner than I expected. On a Tuesday morning, I got a message from one of the HR contacts I'd been feeding. Short, cold, final. "Greg L. has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Your contributions have been noted." I sat there staring at the screen, letting the words settle. Greg was suspended. The predator. The kingmaker. The man Clara hitched her entire future to gone. I didn't tell her right away. I waited, and sure enough, that night, she called me, voice trembling. "Greg's been suspended. Someone reported him. HR's all over the place." I said nothing. She kept talking faster, more frantic. "They're pulling email records. They're checking Slack logs. What if they find our messages?" Then she whispered, "I think someone's trying to ruin me." I almost laughed. She had no idea the knife was coming from inside the house. She kept spiraling. "If this gets out, I lose everything. The mentorship, the promotion." Greg said he'd back me for the Europe transfer. I stayed quiet. Then she said the thing that broke the last thread of my sympathy. "This is going to hurt both of us. You need to help me fix this. Both of us. You blew up your career. You sold your soul to a predator. And now you want me to clean it up?" I said, "I'll think about it," and hung up. And right then, I emailed the final batch, including the full hotel receipts, matching dates to fake work trips with Clara's name attached. Attached everything with a neat little subject line. "For your records, full disclosure." I wasn't just ending our relationship. I was ending her illusion. And the best part, she still had no idea who was behind it, but she'd find out soon. On the day she was supposed to marry me, 2 days before the wedding, I burned it all down quietly, efficiently, and with a calm she would never see coming. I started with the venue, called the coordinator, told her the event was off. She paused, awkwardly asked if I was sure. "I'm sure," I said, tone flat. "She just doesn't know yet." Next was the caterer, then the photographer. Each call chipped away at the fantasy Clara had been curating, this glossy lie she was still selling to the world. I drained our joint wedding fund into my private account, froze all co-linked cards, moved out of my brother's place into a temporary apartment under a short-term lease, switched my number, set up a mail redirect, every thread tying me to her cut clean. She tried calling that afternoon. 5 missed calls. Then a voicemail. "I don't know what's going on, but you're being cruel. Whatever this is, it's not just about Usits, about our families." Funny, she remembered our families now. When she was lying to mine and dismantling everything we built, I guess family didn't factor in. I watched the security cam feed as she showed up at my old building later that night. She stood outside, crying, then yelling, then whispering into the intercom, "Please just talk to me. We can fix this." I didn't answer. I watched her collapse onto the front steps, like she was the victim in someone else's story. It should have hurt seeing her like that. But all I felt was silence. Not satisfaction, not revenge. Just stillness, like walking out of a storm and realizing how loud the wind had been all along. The next morning, I booked a one-way flight and scheduled a delayed email to go out on what would have been our wedding day. Subject line, "For your future." Inside, it was everything. The truth, the receipts. The end. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in a new city, in a cheap hotel room, with sun filtering through pale curtains. There were no vows, no tucks, no aisle. Just silence. And the knowledge that somewhere, Clara was about to read the truth at exactly 9 a.m. the time our ceremony was supposed to start. I watched the email send itself. Subject, "For your future." Inside, the full digital dossier. Screenshots of her texts with Greg. Hotel confirmations. her voice memos bragging about playing the game, and a personal letter. My final words to her: Clara, you once said this was all for our future, but you never asked what kind of future I wanted. You just decided I'd go along with it. You didn't just cheat, you weaponized trust. You used me like a brand asset, a co-star in your ambition. Well, here's what the future looks like now. No wedding, no more lies, and no more me cleaning up the mess you made. Consider this your mirror. I hope you finally see what I saw just before I vanished. The email went to her, her parents, my parents, her maid of honor, 2 of her co-workers. I didn't send it out of cruelty. I sent it because truth deserves witnesses, and because I wanted her to feel, for once, what it's like when your story gets told without your permission. I turned my phone off after that. No calls, no drama. I went down to the lobby and ordered coffee. No ceremony, no crisis. Just me, alive and breathing for the first time in months. Somewhere back home, a wedding dress sat untouched. And Clara, she was finally forced to face everything she'd buried by the time I turned my phone back on 3 days later. It was a war zone. Missed calls, voicemails, hundreds of messages. But not from Clara, from mutual friends, former coworkers, even her mother. And what they were saying was exactly what I expected. Clara went nuclear on social media. She posted a long, dramatic thread about how she was abandoned at the altar, blindsided and emotionally abused by a man who couldn't handle her ambition. She painted herself as the victim of a jealous, insecure fiancé. She even included a photo of her in the wedding dress, standing alone on the venue steps, with the caption, "Sometimes strength is walking through heartbreak with grace." And the worst part, some people believed her. The comment section was full of sympathy. "You deserve better. He couldn't handle a strong woman. You're glowing even through the pain, queen." It should have infuriated me, but honestly, it made me laugh, because I knew the real storm hadn't even started yet. 2 days after her post, Blue Peak released a company-wide memo. An internal investigation has concluded that certain senior-level conduct violated ethical guidelines. Appropriate actions have been taken. Greg wasn't named. Neither was Clara, but people talk. Insiders started putting it together. Screenshots leaked. My email was circulating in group chats. A few brave employees even started subtweeting things like, "Crazy what people will do for a promotion. Hope it was worth it." Clara's comments section went from praise to question marks, then to silence, then to deletion. And I watched it all unfold from the quiet of my new apartment. No spotlight, no statements, no drama, just peace. She tried to spin her story, but the thread unraveled faster than she could hold it together. Because when you live a lie long enough, eventually it starts telling the truth on its own. After everything exploded, I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no victory lap. Just a quiet Tuesday morning where I opened my eyes and didn't feel dread for the first time in months. I'd moved to a small coastal city somewhere Clara never cared to visit. I found a modest apartment with creaky floors, tall windows, and a view of the ocean if you leaned a little to the left. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I started freelancing again. Slow at first, but clients trickled in small businesses, local projects, work that didn't require suits, fake smiles, or office politics. I'd walk to a cafe each morning with my laptop, sit by the window, and just breathe. No one knew me. No one expected anything. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was performing. I adopted a dogga scruffy rescue with one ear that refused to stand straight. Named him Murphy. He became my anchor. Every evening we'd walk the rocky beach path behind my building. Some nights, I'd just sit and watch the waves crash, letting them carry away every lingering trace of Clara's voice in my head. People ask what healing looks like. It's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's quiet. It's saying no to people who expect yes. It's choosing solitude over chaos, peace over performance. Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering if she ever really loved me. But then I'd stop because it didn't matter anymore. Love without respect is just manipulation. With good branding, I stopped checking her socials, blocked every number that felt like a ghost, deleted the wedding folder off my hard drive. I wasn't trying to win anymore. Just breathe. And in that silence, I found something louder than revenge. Every few weeks, I get an email. No subject line. Just a few lines of text from a name I used to know by heart. Please, just talk to me. I made a mistake. You're still the only person who ever saw me. Clara still tries. Sometimes it's guilt. Sometimes it's rage. One message called me cruel. Another begged for a second chance. She even sent a photo of us once, smiling on some rooftop in Brooklyn. Years ago, holding coffee and pretending the world wasn't on fire behind us, I don't respond. I don't open them anymore. They go straight to a folder called Ghosts. Not because I'm bitter, but because healing means setting boundaries so firm they become walls. Her mother emailed once to accuse me of ruining Clara's career and said I should have handled it in private. That word again, private. People like her love secrets. They hate exposure. They'll protect a liar over someone who dares to speak. My parents know everything now. They were shocked at first. Quiet, a little ashamed they ever doubted me. But they apologized and they meant it. They've stood by me ever since. Sometimes people mistake silence for peace. But for me, peace was choosing the silence. Walking away from the noise and not needing the last word because the truth was loud enough. I'm not angry anymore. I don't need revenge. Don't need apologies that arrive only after the damage is done. Clara made her choice. So did I, and that's the part she'll never understand. I don't live in the past, but I've built a future where her name holds no power. And that, more than anything, is what freedom feels like. If you're reading this and you've ever been lied to so well you started doubting your own reality, I need you to know you're not weak. You're not stupid, and you're not alone. Manipulators are good at what they do. They don't just lie with words, they lie with actions, smiles, and plans for the future. They mirror your dreams, your values, your empathy. And when it all falls apart, they make you think you broke it. But here's the truth. If someone cheats and then blames you for reacting, if they betray you and call it strategy, if they shatter your trust and then ask you to clean up the mess, that's not love. That's control. You're not crazy for hurting. You're not overreacting for needing space. And you're not selfish for choosing to walk away from a house built on lies. They'll call you cold. They'll say you abandoned them. But the only thing you abandoned was a version of yourself that tolerated being second. I get messages sometimes from strangers, from friends of friends, people who've read between the lines of what happened. And almost all of them say the same thing. I thought I was the only one. You're not. There are more of us than you think. People who loved too deeply. People who believed too fully. People who trusted and got burned for it. But here's what I've learned. You don't have to get even. You just have to get free. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It's living a life so far beyond their reach that they can only watch from a distance, knowing they'll never be invited back in. That's how you win. By healing, by surviving, by vanishing from the narrative they tried to control,